am going to call to order the Monday, September 14th meeting of the Norton Charter Commission. All members are present with the exception of Carrie Snyder, who will be absent this evening, and JD Goodwin, who will be running a little bit late and will join us shortly. Let's see. We want to run through the acceptance of the prior minutes. So we had two different sets. Let's take them in order. So the Charter Commission minutes of July 27th.
There is one change there that Denise pointed out that I didn't say what time the meeting adjourned, so I'll add that in.
Okay, noted. Okay. If everybody's had a chance to look at them, I'll take a motion to accept the meeting minutes of July 27th with the technical amendment noted by Sandy.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, roll call. All in favor? Denise?
Yep.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
David Wren?
I'm going to, I wasn't there.
Okay. Abstain?
Abstain, thank you.
Dave Heaney?
Yes.
I am in acceptance of those as well. Those minutes are accepted. All right, moving on to the minutes of the public hearing of August 17th and 22nd combined. Sandy, I don't know if you saw my email. I sent you two just small technical, and then I had one suggestion, but.
Yeah, there's two edits I made was just a couple missing words and something like that, right?
Articles, yeah.
Yeah. So I fixed the made the grammar fixes.
Okay. I had wondered if we should consider Mr. Freeman's comments with regards to the preliminary report. He was not in favor of any of the positions that seemed necessary based upon what we had heard in our interview process. Didn't know how anybody else felt about it. I understand it's not going to go in the charter and it was only in the preliminary report, but I didn't know whether it should be duly noted or not.
So I did note the DPW. That was one of the positions, but he also mentioned HR, and I'm not sure if there anything else, but those were not things we changed.
Right.
So I'm stuck with what was actually part of our charter.
Okay.
But I can include it if you want to include it.
Anybody else have an opinion? Seeing none? All right. I will. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes of the public hearing of August 17th, continued to August 22nd.
So moved.
There's a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Denise?
Yep.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kevin?
I'm going to abstain because I missed one of them.
Okay. Keith?
Yes.
David Wren?
Yes.
Dave Heaney?
Yes.
I am in favor as well. Those minutes are accepted. Okay, that's done. I don't think we have any administrative items to discuss, which is a first for a little while. Nice to have. I'm going to open the public comment. Is there any members of the public who wish to be heard at this time?
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Mr. Tool.
Hi, Michael Toole, 104 Newcomb Street. So I've been following what I want to just first begin by saying thank you to all of you. I've been following you guys from a distance, and I really commend the energy and effort you have all put into the proposed or the preliminary charter. So, but the reason I came tonight was specifically to talk and just really stress my concerns about two areas of concern. One which I believe would be section 2.1A, which is the makeup of the committee. One of the things that we heard in a very animated way, and I've heard it third party, but through the the public hearings, was about missing, and I keep hearing it over and over again, about representation disappearing from the citizens. And while I don't believe that at its fullest, I do believe that electing individuals from precincts at large is a better representation. And I know this committee has debated this issue back and forth several times. If you indulge me, and I don't want to keep the committee all night or anything, but if you indulge me just a couple of points, I don't believe it's a matter of typically within cities where race or neighborhoods and representations really play a part. I don't believe that's it. I think it's more of a small town feeling of, we know that who they're going to contact or who they're going to vote for if they have an issue. It's really about representation. I think that if I'm in precinct 4, and I hate to use the pothole analogy. If I've got a pothole in front of my house, I know I'm going to call Michael Toole, my delegate to the council, to try to find out how I can address that issue. And I think this is one of the ways that, can eliminate any of argument regards to representation and losing their voice. I think this is a great way that we can kind of nip that in this. And I don't believe it's surrendering any at-large seats. I believe there should be. If I had my choice, I'd be a 5 and 2, 5 precincts, elected delegates, and 2 at-large. I think having a certain number of at-large is necessary, but I really do think it comes down to representation. And even though we are a town in neighborhoods, but people don't really recognize that. But there is an east side and west side of town that I think have different issues. And I really believe if you break down the average age by precinct, there are certain precincts that are older. Mine is while it sounds small, is about a year older than some of the other precincts. And if you kind of brought that argument up, if you looked at the age situation, I think that's an important factor. The other component is I think, again, is you're electing there's an argument that just keeps being made out there we have trouble filling seats as it is. I don't think we've had trouble filling a selectman seats. While the races don't go opposed with people that have already been in the office and are opposed, I don't think for the council and finance committees and area school committees, those seats typically do not go unfilled. So I don't think the argument there, because I've spoken to many of you and I've read it over and over again, and it's really, for me, I had to get on here and just kind of get my piece. The other section that I really, really wanted to bring to attention was, I believe it is section 4.3 in regards to the powers of the town manager. I don't believe, and I could be wrong on that exact section, but let me just I can double check for you. But we're doing this. I don't want to go from where we're putting the power into a council to giving one individual the town. And I understand there has to be a balance, but I think appointments of certain department heads and or larger committees, I think it's a mistake to take it out of the council's hands that are elected by the citizens. I think that's one thing that I think you can recapture, and I hope that you, as a committee, look at those 2 points of, the precincts again. I think it's really, really important that we are pushing for representation and holding individuals' representation to certain parts of town, and then the powers of the town manager. I would hate to see that come out of I want to see more power on the town council than just giving to the town manager. So
Okay, if I could just ask.
Me and I can talk for hours, so I'm going to stop there and land the plane.
Okay. I appreciate that, and just mainly, I was having a little trouble on the second point, so I want to clarify to make sure
Yeah,
we're all in.
I gave you the right.
In under, yeah, we're all in. So right now, the town manager is responsible for appointing all department heads. There are a subset of department heads that require confirmation by town council, and they were chosen specifically for the departments that make up the largest percentage of the budget, so that there is a checks and balances with regards to department head hiring in those major areas. The town manager has the responsibility for appointing all multiple member body seats that are not elected. And so I'm just trying to get clarification. Is your issue with the department head appointments or with the appointing of multiple member body?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the department head appointments, isn't there an approval process of the select board as well? Currently?
I don't know. Are they subject to, any of them subject to ratification by, I think they all are.
I think they are.
Maybe?
I think the discussion we had was we felt that was a little cumbersome from the point of view of, waiting, the appointments having to wait for that confirmation, which are more purposeful than anything else.
And I think that's we are in a small town and we do have things. I would rather see that approval process remain in effect. And that really does, like you said, put the power back into like the council's hands, which the citizens have elected.
But my question is the same as Laura's. Is your concern with the appointments of every single employee of the town still being approved by the council? Or is it the fact that you're just concerned whether or not they stay with the department chair or department head and the multiple member bodies? That's my confusion as well. Like, I just want, to clarify that.
So Kevin, let me just, right now, we do appointments through the select. I guess I like the way that we do it now. I very much do enjoy the way that the select board does have a vote on the key positions within town.
And I understand what the process is now, but
Yeah.
like what Sandy was saying was, I believe that our intention on that was that for individual appointments to say, multiple departments in town for town employees, that the town manager, whoever is in that position is going to have the power to kind of, per se steer the ship. They're going to be the ones responsible for hiring, firing, discipline, and all that other stuff. They're also going to be in cohorts with the department head on those hirings. So, for instance, that's why we went with that way, but we still left it to the fact that when you have a department head that's going to be representing the town and all that, you're still going to have the council being able to ratify that appointment.
Yeah, I guess I would surrender not every position. Obviously, the department heads, I think, are
Well, that's what we have in the preliminary one right now. We
in the
have it as
subsection 1.
Yeah, we have it as the department heads of, quote me if I'm wrong, the police department, fire department, a couple of the other ones that obviously are in there. But for every single appointment that goes on every single day, the responsibility in hiring and firing are the ones that are going to be calling. We are not going to be like this. Town council isn't going to be calling those employees in and having a discussion with them unless it's through the town manager who you want steering the ship and have some accountability. That was the whole point. So that's why I think we went with that. If anybody else has an input on it, but
and maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I misread that and misunderstood that understanding. I was under, when I read the full section of 3.4, I thought I was under the impression submitted to the town council that he had the right to appoint all those positions. But as I'm reading it here now, again, I will surrender that. What I want to do is make sure we're not making the town manager too strong. And it has nothing to do with, obviously, the individual that's there now. Obviously, we're talking just in the future. And I just want to make sure that we're not lessening the power of the legislative board. That is established.
Is everybody clear?
And if I had my pecking order, the precincts would be my number one concern, not the would be number one compared to the second issue. But they're both major concerns of mine, and I just wanted to express the committee. And I know that I would ask you to really debate it again. I know you guys have kind of beat that horse several times, and I've watched the videos on it. So,
Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right. You may have actually been the first person from the public to come out and actually address us. So thank you, Mr. Toole. Appreciate it. And I suspect we'll probably get into some of that discussion further on in the meeting if you'd like to hang out and listen.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So anybody else from the public wish to speak at this time? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section. All right. With regards to the public hearing feedback, what I would like to do is I went through the minutes that Sandy put together, and I combined them with we got, I think, a total of 6 emails, 4 of which had some things for us to consider and to discuss. What I'd like to do is go through the charter and just go through it by sections, and I will go through the issues that were specifically raised. We can have a discussion as to whether we want to have a further discussion on it, reconsider something, maybe tweak something. I'm certain we're going to look to Lauren to provide us guidance on certain things. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I have a version of the latest charter with edits in it showing where all of the comments were. So hang on a second. Okay. All right. So can everybody see the whole screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is only taking into account things that we have heard either through email or I have passed along through text. If anybody else has had any specific conversations about other areas that I have not had marked in here, please feel free to raise your hand and let me know what you heard or may want to bring up for discussion further. There was nothing within Article 1. Article 2 revolves around the legislative branch. The first was a comment, just a general comment from Mr. Freeman, expressed his concern that we're taking power away from people by taking away town meeting. Based on where we are in the process right now, I believe we are all in agreement that we do not wish to reopen this. Hearing nobody, I'm going to move on. The next item that has been brought up was via 2 different emails and actually just addressed here now by Mr. Toole. I'm going to, just for the sake of the record, I'm going to go through and just kind of quickly overview the comments that we had heard, just in case people forgot what was mentioned. So Sandy and Diane Battistello, who's on the Board of Health, had some conversations very early on in the process. This is back in January and February. Her final comment to us was with regards to, at the time, and again, sorry, apologies, this is from February 15th, so it's since been clarified, but if I recall, this is also the same woman who raised this very issue on a Facebook post as well. So she was talking about, she referred to the minutes, wasn't sure if we had approved 7 or 9 members and if they would come from each precinct. And this is the important part. She said this is my most important concern, that people are adequately represented. I know town meeting is highly ineffective, but it's still one person, one vote, and removing that, I believe, should be followed by adequate representation. So that was her position with regards to having precinct councilors versus fully at large. There was a second email from a Mike Petrosevich, who had initially asked if we could explain how the 7 seats would be elected, meaning if they would be at precinct or at large, and how they were chosen. We provided him with clarification and came back and stated that I would be a big fan of making sure you have all precincts represented and make sure all areas are represented instead of just people who are most interested or have free time. But I also don't think it is fair for me to poke holes at all the hard work you guys have done at the 11th hour. And this was an email on August 14th. We did give him clarification on how they were posted, how they were decided, and gave him explicit instructions on where to find those within the meeting and within the YouTube videos. I have not heard from him since, and I do not believe he came to our public hearing. So I'm not entirely certain if after reviewing the meeting minutes or the meetings to which we referred him, if he was still of the same opinion, but that was an initial comment that was represented with regards to how the members are chosen. So that being said, has anybody heard, and we also just heard from Mr. Toole, given that, is anybody inclined to open this up further for discussion? And I feel badly because Jamie's not here.
I was gonna say, should we
All right.
hold that question till like Janie and Carrie are back as well? Because that was probably the hottest topic that we discussed of all of them.
Yeah. Well, Janie's going to be late. Carrie was not going to make it. So we have to have our final done by the 23rd. We have Attorney General comments that we have to address, and we have to write a final report. So I really would rather not put this off until next week because I think at that point we're going to be getting into crunch time.
I think if it's something that we're gonna have to talk about, we might as well start doing it now.
So if you've got an issue, raise it now. I'm okay with.
Sorry.
With that being said, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I am okay if we want to jump ahead and wait for Janie to return. We're not going to have Carrie tonight, unfortunately. She said she may be able to hop on, but she was not expecting to be able to. So, but in the spirit of fairness, I know this was a particular issue that she had also wanted to talk about, not necessarily to rehash the whole thing. Her concern was more on, can we sell it the way it is? She wanted to make sure we were presenting something that was going to be accepted by the majority of the town and didn't want to hinder us. So I know that was where she was coming from on this particular question. So if everybody is okay with this, I'm inclined to hold off until Janie arrives. I don't see her in the waiting room yet. Is everybody okay with that?
Sure.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on to, okay. So section 2.6C, an issue that Bill Gouveia had raised. I've actually read it a couple of times. I'm clear, but let me read the comment and we can get Lauren's feedback and see if there was maybe some way to tweak this language that could make it a little clearer. So Bill Gouveia had asked for clarification with regards to 2.6C. and this has to do with the right to postpone. He asked whether one counselor can postpone a vote once or whether every counselor can do it once on a particular issue. Mr. Wren had responded that it is once per issue. Mr. Gouveia felt that it should be clear in the language to explain that. I've highlighted the particular area, and it says this procedure shall not be used more than once for any specific measure, whether or not such measure is amended. I'm of the opinion that once is it. So, does anybody feel that this is in any way unclear, that we would want this clarified?
I think it's clear. My personal opinion is Bill read it. Like a lot of people, when you read this, it takes you 2 times to read through it. And probably didn't pick up on that sentence. But that's my personal opinion. I can't speak for Bill, obviously, but I think it's clear. My personal opinion is that it's clear. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it says specifically can't be used more than once, and that would seem to imply only one counselor could ever bring it up. And it does say any specific measure.
Right.
So I tend to agree with you that, yeah, maybe it was just glossed over. Does anybody feel differently?
No.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Okay, the next was regards to section 2.9, the standing and ad hoc committees. So Bill had raised an issue. This is issue number 2 that he had raised, and I'll read it. Mr. Gouveia expressed concern on allowing the president of town council to make appointments to standing committees rather than the council itself. He also expressed concern that a member can be removed at the sole discretion of the council president, particularly with the residents serving on different committees. He felt that if the president is going to remove someone other than reassigning a council member, that person should have a right to a hearing, to have their say in front of the town. Lauren, I did have one question just for clarification, and it's the second highlighted section where it says committees established under these provisions shall consist of an odd number to be appointed for 1-year terms. The question was with regards to who may be removed therefrom by council president at the president's sole discretion. Does that mean they can be removed at any time or at the end of their 1-year term?
That would mean they could be removed at any time.
Okay.
Because without that 1-year term would mean that they are appointed for 1 year, and no matter what, they couldn't be removed.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So given the fact that these are only 1-year terms, I did not find this quite as problematic as Bill did, but I'm open to anybody else's opinion.
I guess I would ask Lauren, is that something that you've seen written in charters before, that they have the right to a hearing if they're going to be removed? Or is that unusual?
So it's not necessarily unusual, Sandy, for there to be a hearing requirement, but typically it is something that, the longer the term, the more likely that removal would include a hearing. I guess from my perspective, the way that this was written is the council president isn't removing the person from the council, they're removing them from a committee. And because the council president is the appointing authority, usually the power to appoint includes the power to remove. So I guess that's where I came from on that. The other thing I'd point out is that, especially, obviously removal is a big deal. I don't think a council president would do that, randomly or without serious consideration. But in theory, if there were a hearing, again, I think the idea here is that the council president who's, been selected to serve as the president is vested with the authority to make the decision about committee membership. If we back that out and it winds up being that you have to have an opportunity for a hearing before a person can be removed from a committee, it kind of inherently becomes political. Again, the council president would still be the entity making the decision. So if you were to change that and have it be, for example, the full council, that's a significant shift in the council president's role.
What if we were to do something similar to what we had with the town manager, where removal had to be subject to confirmation of the town council?
Again, because it's your charter, you can do anything that you want. I do think that, if one were to kind of take this down a road, you can see that having to have a public hearing creates all sorts of issues that a council president saying, no, this doesn't work. Let's just say there was conduct that was unbecoming, or if there were, a failure to attend, et cetera. So all of a sudden we're going from the council president saying, look, you didn't come to 3 meetings. I think it really matters. We need to have people there all the time. To that person kind of pleading their case to the council. I didn't come because this, or this, or I'm being targeted because of X, Y, or Z. It's a policy question about how to deal with it. Again, I don't think that council president, and from my experience, I don't think council presidents make appointments, without being confident in them. Again, I think this language was definitely added because of appointed for 1-year terms. Because without that language, that person is there for the duration and regardless.
Laura, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question, because I don't remember having a lot of deep discussion about having the council president versus the full council. Did we have any pressing reason why we went with this path instead of going with the full council?
I went back and did a little bit of research. We did put a grid together we looked at the model charter to see what the roles and responsibilities of the town council president. And then we also looked at I think we looked at 4 other charters. Kind of from what I could tell on this particular one, it looked like it aligns with the model charter, it aligns with North Attleboro, it aligns with Amherst. Watertown, we did compare it against. Watertown's charter was interesting. It refers to standing committees of town council. Nowhere in the charter does it make a reference to how those standing committees are appointed or set up. It refers to several of them, but it does not state how they get created.
I mean, I sure wouldn't be opposed to the full council voting to both appoint and remove those positions. So I guess I'm indifferent. I'm not opposed to changing it to the full council. And then they meet every 2 weeks, right? So it's not like you have to wait long periods of time to do that.
So in terms of appointing because they're appointing two types of people, right? They're appointing the town council, other town councilors, and they're appointing the residents. In terms of appointing the town councilors, I feel like that's a weird thing to ask the entire council to vote on who they're going to appoint to each committee. And in that case, it just might be simpler to say that the town council president is going to be the one to do that. I can see the point a little bit more with the residents, but I think that the fact that they chose the council president themselves and can unchoose, right? Can decide to have a different council president if they don't like that person's appointments. I guess I have much less of an issue. I think that's more cumbersome to ask the entire council to vote when they're appointing their own council members to these different subcommittees.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure, please.
Yeah, I just want to kind of take us back to one of the conversations we had about what's the job of the council president. So I do think you want to go back and look at the job of the council president, you know, what the responsibilities of the job are, because appointing committees to me is an important part of that council president's role. The other thing is, again, it says that the council president will appoint the residents. You know, I think number one, they're just for a 1-year term. So there's always going to be a debate about whether to try to remove someone or whether to just leave them there. The other thing is, you can provide for a hearing. You could say who may be removed therefrom by the council president at the president's sole discretion after the opportunity for a hearing, if what we're worried about is due process stuff. But again, I get back to kind of the practical role of the council versus the role of the manager. And I think, you know, one of the things that we kind of talked about at the beginning is, what does a legislative body do? So what's the difference between a town council and a select board? And there are differences. And so, you know, again, I think kind of coming back to what's this body going to be doing? It's going to be passing laws. And then we're going to stop and have a hearing on whether to remove a volunteer. It seems somewhat inconsistent with the idea of the administrative part of the town operating kind of to the side, you know, under a manager, with the legislative part of the town operating under the, you know, passing laws, making decisions, accepting, you know, statutes, requesting special legislation, approving the budget. Those just seem to be somewhat different in kind. And, you know, frankly, all I can think of when you guys are talking about this is the kind of fight that would ensue if the full council was to be making decisions like this. Not only would we have to deal with personnel issues, let's just say, I mean, you know, you could imagine there could be a variety of things. One could be like a failure to show up. That doesn't seem such a big deal, except if someone has to get up in front of the entire council and explain, well, I was sick on this day and on that day I forgot, and this day, you know, it sounds like we're talking about things that are probably more personal in nature. If there's a, you know, a quote unquote alleged bad act, is that something that we want to have to bring to the council? Or does it make more sense for the council president to say, this is, you know, what's been alleged? I'd be more comfortable if you know, if you resign, and the person says, you know, I won't. Then there's, you know, essentially a hearing where the council listens to the person's plea. I don't know if it's worth that. I don't know a better way to explain it. If that much drama or potential drama is appropriate for a 1-year term. And, you know, again, I think it's philosophical about the amount that the council is involved in these kinds of matters, as compared to, you know, the kind of more executive function that this would normally be, because town meeting doesn't usually appoint people to committees. Town meeting creates committees, and then people are appointed. Town meeting doesn't decide whether it was appropriate for, you know, the legislative body to, I'm sorry, if it was appropriate for the executive to fire someone or to let someone go. Usually that's done by the executive side of the government. So, you know, it's not illegal. Changing it isn't going to be detrimental to your proposal. It's a question of how it works in kind of in real life, and whether that change is something that you want to add to it, to the council's plate and to the council's authority.
Can I just add a point about the hearing? It seems like since the president can already let the person, not reappoint the person after a year for no reason, right? So they could just wait the year out and not reappoint them without any reason, without any hearing. That, first of all, I'd see them more likely just waiting out the year. But again, if that's what they're allowed to do, then, and without a hearing, then what's the point of a hearing if it's a 6-month, you know, letting go at 6 months versus a year. It doesn't seem to be consistent.
My general recollection is, we had a lot of discussion about giving the town council president, so we have an efficient running town council. And, if we're gonna have all the council members voting on everything, then we're not gonna have a very efficient town council. So some things have to be delegated to the president, who's given a lot of power. So I think Bill's point was valid, but I think it was done that way on purpose. And there are checks and balances because they can, if the other council members aren't happy with the council president, they can choose somebody else. So, if you think back to Lauren's point to a certain extent, it's part of it to me is this practical aspect of this, and we're going to bog down the town council with everything else they go on with issues like this that can just be more efficiently addressed, I think, by one person. So that's kind of where I come on. I get Bill's point. He does have a lot of power, but I think we did that to a certain extent. We've done it for some of these areas, because otherwise we're going to spend a lot of time in town council, and we should be spending time on the budget and other bigger issues, and rather than appointing people to standing committees. So
I'm of the similar opinion. When I read it, initially my thought was, well, town council elects the town president, or the town council president. So they've entrusted their faith in that person to do a good job. My other comment was, it is, again, as has been mentioned a few times here now, it is just 1 year. So if it was something so egregious that required an immediate removal, I would expect there to be no need for a public hearing, as opposed to just waiting it out and reappointing someone.
I was gonna say, just point of clarification. I know we keep saying it's just 1 year, but they can keep reappointing the same person year over year over year, right? There's nothing to prevent them from doing that.
Correct.
Okay.
but if they kept reappointing somebody who was, let's say, unqualified, for example, then presumably the other council members would choose a new council president because he's not doing a great job doing these committees.
And nothing is precluding them from keeping quiet on the matter either, if they had concerns.
I'm relatively indifferent to keeping it or changing it. So I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay. Anybody wish to make a motion to amend this section? Okay. Moving on. Okay. All right. This was, and I'm going to mangle her name. I apologize. Maureen Straczynski made a few comments. The first one was with regards to suggesting that the Conservation Commissioner, actually agent, be included in the Department of Public Works. I think we had adequately explained this within the context of the public hearing, that the Conservation Commission itself would fall outside of the purview of the DPW because they are entrusted to act within the State and Wetland Protection Act guidelines, and the conservation agent would as well, and there is no real precedent for a conservation agent to fall within the DPW. And even if there was to be a town engineer within the DPW, the conservation department should just have access to that person, we would hope, for use in their areas as well. Is everybody in agreement? Okay.
I'm good.
Excellent. Moving on. Can somebody? All right. This was another comment by Mr. Gouveia. Okay, and this had to do with section 3.5, and one of the things that I wanted to clarify here is 3.5 is the filling of vacancies of elected seats only. Mr. Gouveia asked whether the council had put forth their own nominee when there's a vacancy in a multiple member body. Ms. Ola had explained the body with the vacancy can put a name forward in order to give them more say in the appointment. Mr. Gouveia suggested that the language could be clearer in that section. Did anybody have any issues with the wording of this where we would want to see a tweak? Did anybody find it unclear? I know it's hard because we also have the benefit of having looked at it multiple times over. Oh, I don't see, hang on, this is Janie. Sandy, do you see her in the waiting room?
I let her in, actually. I don't know where she went though.
Oh,
I thought I did. I let in an iPhone. I assumed it was her. Maybe it was.
no, that's Zach.
Okay.
I think that, well, maybe it wasn't because Zach was texting me as well saying he was trying to get in and I admitted somebody.
But I don't see anybody waiting to come in. Maybe did she look at the wrong, did she click on next week's link? I wonder.
I'm waiting for, yep, she is.
I almost did the same thing. You sent out the two meetings back to back, two links, and I was almost opened the wrong email. So that's why I knew that's probably what she did.
I almost said something like, this is for the second meeting, make sure you don't click on it. And it's like, oh, no, they'll get it. All right. So,
As far as knowing what today's date is, Laura.
yeah, I know. This day and age, I understand. And especially with you both being teachers, you get some leeway. All right. Okay, so I'm going to wait for Janie, and then if everybody's okay, I'm going to pop back to section 2. I don't see her. There she is. You there, Janie?
Hello.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. All set. Sorry, David, what was that?
I was just gonna, so I was rereading 3-5 for the fifth time, but I guess as I read it the last time, I guess I see Bill's point in the sense that it, you know, when it says which body shall recommend to the council the proposed appointee, and of course that's referring to the multi-member body. But I can see where, I guess I can see where it could be a tad confusing, because even though you could interpret it as the multi-member body or maybe the town council. I mean, I know that's not how it is interpreted, but I guess I can see where the confusion could possibly get.
Okay, so maybe which body with the vacancy shall recommend a council to the council a proposed appointee?
Yeah, right.
Do we have Lauren? Sorry, Lauren, I meant to ask you, do you have this up in case we did need to make edits?
I do.
Excellent. Do you see an issue with that, or do you see some way of clarifying that a little bit further?
I think that's a fine clarification.
Okay. We'll give him a win.
Yeah, well, I think it's a valid point. I think it's grammatically correct, you know, but
Yeah.
You have to read slow.
If a layperson, you know, who hasn't been looking at it for months on end,
right,
has an issue with it, then, you know, the first one I think he just kind of missed it.
Yeah, I think so too. But,
Okay.
I missed a lot too the first time I read this thing. So. Yeah. That time I read it, I missed a lot, but that's okay.
Still keep finding things. I'm like, oh, I forgot we did that. Okay. Okay, so for Janie's benefit, I'm just going to do a quick recap. Janie, we are going through the charter by section, and I'm taking all of the, so the version that you're seeing on the screen in front of you, what I did was I took all of the comments from the public hearings and then the ones that we received separately via email and marked where questions or clarifications or comments were made. And we're going through them one by one to see if we want to discuss them further, make any quick changes. Up until now, I don't actually think we have chosen to change anything other than that slight wording change to section 3-5. But this one, with regards to 7 members elected at large, came up, Michael Toole spoke to us a little bit earlier. And we had 2 emails come in, one a little prior to the, in the process from Diane Battistello, the Board of Health, basically just stipulating that her most important concern was that the people were adequately represented. She knows town meeting is highly ineffective, but it's still one person, one vote, and removing that she believes should be followed by adequate representation. The second comment was with regards to same thing from Mike Petrusevich, who had written to us just after the preliminary report and charter were issued before the public hearing, stating that, can you please explain how the 7 seats are elected in terms of precinct or at large? We gave him clarification and pointed him to the minutes and the sections of the meetings where that was discussed. He came back pretty quickly and just stated, I would be a big fan of making sure you have all precincts represented to make sure all areas are represented instead of just the people who are most interested and or have free time. But I also don't think it's fair for me to poke holes at all the hard work you guys have done at the 11th hour. Thanks again. And that was that comment. And Mr. Toole came in and spoke to us during the public comment section as well, and stated that he had a very strong preference for precinct council representation, and stated that it was not necessarily a city or a neighborhood issue, but more of just the small town quote unquote feeling. And that's the gist of the comments he made. He also had a comment with regards to another section, which we can address later. So we had opened it up for discussion, but wanted to wait. We know, I know which side of the equation you were on within the vote, so I wanted to make sure that you were here, so that as many people, I should also point out Carrie is absent this evening. I wanted to have as many people here to discuss the item, so that it was a fair representation. So that's where we are. That's where we left it off last. So I am going to open it up for further comment from the commission members.
Okay, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Janie.
No, I was going to start. First of all, thank you for recapping. I apologize for being late. We did take a vote on this. It was a close vote. I did vote for the precincts, although I do see the advantages in both methods of electing the councilors. I still think that the precincts is the most, the best way to create some type of equity within the town and a way for people to feel like their voices are being heard. Especially if we're talking about an older group, for example, that tend to live in communities, I think that they want to know that they have representation within their precincts and that they have someone to go to, for example. I know that it brought up some issues in terms of voting every 3 years and only being able to vote for I think it was every 3 years. I forget. Someone will have to refresh my memory what the downfall of that was. But I am still on the favor of precincts. I think it's the most equitable, and I think it also makes people feel like they're a lot more represented.
I'm with Janie.
So I guess while I appreciate the commentary and thank Mr. Toole for joining tonight, I guess I haven't heard anything new, right? And to me, if we're going to revisit something, it needs to be because new information has been brought to bear, right? We had over the course of multiple days, and I don't know, there's somebody with kids in the, sorry, based on the face on the Zoom, I think I know who it was. But if, if we're going to revisit something, it should be based on new information. The points that Mr. Toole raised tonight, I think we had duly considered over the course of our debate, of our lengthy debate on the issue. The points that Janie just made, I think are consistent with her position from months ago when that conversation was had. And also, if this is something that we revisit, we need to revisit a whole lot of other things, from the size of the committee to probably a half dozen other major decisions that if we were to flip this a different way, I personally would want to open up a number of other follow-up decisions that we made after we settled on this particular structure.
And I agree with that, and I understand your point with hearing something new. Although we were very closely divided. I don't think that you're necessarily going to come up with any new arguments either way. We both presented our cases, so I don't think you're going to come up with anything new. I think the only thing you're going to come up with is the public response to it. So I don't think you're going to come up with anything new. And I think if we're waiting for something like that, that's not going to happen. We're pretty much split down the middle. I think the only thing new is response and public response to this. And I do think, I will be very honest, whether or not people agree or people don't agree, I think that there are a lot of people that are concerned, should we vote a council at large, that they are going to get 7 members of a very like-minded group of people, like a very like-minded board, for example, and they're not going to get much diversity, and that's what people are concerned of. And it's a lot of reason people are voting on a lot of issues certain ways because of that. I know that you might not agree with it, and I'm just telling you that is part of the perception and part of the concern out there on the part of public, some of the public, not all of the public, but some of the public.
So
Sorry.
the only thing I like to say where I agree, Dave, is that there's probably not any new arguments. You all know my vote. I mean, I still truly believe that at large is the way to go. I think the long-term planning and long-term, for the town, I think it's going to be a more feasible way to do it. But I look at it as I was more concerned right from the beginning, after we heard all the arguments, was to get the town council part of it into the charter. What I'm saying by this is if switching to something that goes to where they're elected, in precincts, or whether or not elected at large, is it something that we're losing votes by keeping it? So for instance, if we switch to where they're elected at precincts, are we gaining votes? Where if we keep it the way it is, are we losing votes? Because I don't see us keeping it where we are. If we keep it where we are, I do believe we are going to lose some votes on this as a yes. Where if we switch it, I don't see the people that were going to vote for this as at large are all of a sudden going to say, oh, you switched the precincts, I'm out. I don't believe that to be true. I think you're voting it for the overall thing of going to town council, eliminating town meeting, for ease of access and all that stuff. So again, while I still believe long-term, it is much better for us as a town, especially the size of our town, to keep it at large, due to the size of the precincts, to spread out the ability, all the things that we talked about before. I just don't know if it's worth, if we lose 50 votes out of it, is it really worth it? I just don't think it is.
So if I can add, first of all, the public response part I'm having a hard time with because I feel like you're only gonna ever hear from the people that disagree with something, right? They're not gonna come out and say, hey, I love the fact that you did at large. They're gonna focus on the things that they don't like, that they wanna change. We didn't really hear a whole lot of people pointing out specific things they liked about it. It was more general, thanks for your work. Here are my issues that I have with it. So I don't know that we're really hearing from both sides out there right now. I feel like we're only hearing from those who are opposed. I completely agree with Dave that if we're going to open this up, then there are, again, at least half a dozen conversations we need to reopen up. And those were long conversations, some of them as well, right? So we're talking about a good amount of time to go back and revisit every single thing that we've already decided and discussed, and take a look at the impact on that in the big picture. So I do have concerns about that and just about the amount of time that's going to take, but also just the, if we're going to be able to reach consensus on all those things now at this point, given how kind of late it is. So, those. Go ahead.
Sorry, Sandy. I just want to make sure it's clear. I don't think either of us are suggesting that we're not willing to put in the time to go revisit those issues, right? We certainly would be if that's where the council wanted to go. But I just wanted to point out, this is not just about this one issue. We did this one first, or this was one of the first major decisions we made because we recognized everything else fell out of it, right? So we would be potentially fundamentally changing a large portion of the charter, or at least discussing it, if we made this change.
And I can say this was also from following North Attleboro and what they were going through. I know this was also a pretty big issue for them as well, that there were people who were writing editorials and, even afterwards writing editorials on both sides, talking about the two issues they went at large. There were certainly people that wanted precincts. But in the end, I don't know that it affected, how many votes it affected. I don't know how we can measure that and gauge that. How many people are going to say, no, we want to keep town meeting rather than have 7 at-large councilors. I'm wondering how many people are going to take that stance.
If I could just weigh in on one thing. So I had a conversation with somebody actually out in the public who had approached me out of the blue, which is a little unnerving when people recognize me and I have no idea who they are, and said, like the work that you're doing, did happen to say, I'd like to see precincts. And I said, I understand that. Tell me why. And they went through. It was the question of representation. And, my response to this woman was, at large, in my opinion, provides for more accountability. Council shouldn't be beholden to any one precinct, any neighborhood, any project. A good candidate should be able to get elected regardless of the precinct in they reside, and a bad councilor shouldn't be able to keep their seat just because 80% of the voters cannot vote them out. And I said, for me, being able to vote everyone out is just as important to being able to vote them in. I'm of the opinion that all voters should be able to have the ability to vote out a bad councilor. And so from that perspective, she said, oh, I actually hadn't thought of that. That's a really good rationale. You make a very good point. I'm not exactly sure I've completely switched her over to my side, but I had given her something to think about, which leads me to believe that if we do good enough education on the pros and cons of the decision that we made, that I think people are likely to understand it. I also think it's important to point out that, again, I think as a couple of people, Kevin and Sandy mentioned, the only thing that we can't fix after the fact is the form of government. So if we get 5 years into this and realize that it's not working, and we've got 6 precincts, or we get 6 councilors from a single precinct, maybe we need to revisit that issue, but that can be changed at any point in the future. The town council point is the part that's important, and I would hope is the point that the people would be voting on and viewing as more important.
Yeah, I would just add that we knew that this was going to be a tough topic to present to the public, and in fairness, we're hearing some feedback, but we have not yet given our rationales behind any of these yet. So hopefully that will help quell some of the fears that we're hearing from folks, and we'll be able to kind of get the information out there a little bit better.
I think with education,
Yeah.
we can assuage fears.
Yeah.
I hope. I think we can. But given and this was an older woman. She actually works for the. She helps Luso with the voting, the election day stuff. So, yeah, she knew exactly who I was. She said she'd been watching all the meetings, and so I again, based on that conversation, I was pleasantly surprised that she was so willing to listen and consider another point of view. And not everybody has listened to the 2.5 meetings where we discussed this and the full extent of it. So I would hope with education we should be able to bring people over.
So in one of my last comments here on this topic, because it doesn't seem like we're going to go back and review it, but I don't think that education, your conversation and your one-to-one with the woman who clearly was a desire to know a little bit more. I think that's great. I think we're going to have trouble educating the public as a whole on that sense. I also think we know that oftentimes, the people who come out to these meetings or who have tuned into our meetings or who have come out to our virtual or our public hearing are few out there who want to know well in advance and educate themselves. But when it comes down to the wire and people are going to have to vote, they're going to want to know all these details, good, bad, or indifferent. And we can say to them, well, where were you 6 months ago? But that's not going to help us get any votes. So I think that the education on the whole is going to be troublesome. That one-to-one experience that you had is good, but I think that we may have some difficulty when it comes to the public as a whole. I also think it's okay in my opinion, I think it's okay for somebody to represent a district. I don't think it has to be a bad thing, and I don't think people look at it as a bad thing. Of course, counselors shouldn't be, and selectmen shouldn't be beholden to a district in which they represent. However, I think it is okay to have a district that you represent, and for that people within that district to have that feeling of representation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that means that those counselors will seek only what's best for their district. They're still representatives of the town and counselors of the town. And under that, we would of course still have, if there were a representative, you still have at-large seats. So I do know that it opens a whole other can of worms, and I know that it's time consuming, and I know that we put a lot of time into it. But I think it's going to be one of the sticking points in terms of getting votes for us, for the charter, not for us, for the charter.
Madam Chair, if I can just put my 2 cents in.
Please. And Keith was here somewhere. I heard him pipe up at one point, so we should hear from Keith too.
Yeah. So I think Emily's brought up a lot of good points. My personal feeling is that we as a commission did a great job of dissecting the pros and cons of this issue. And we took it. There was a tough vote, and there was so many valid points on both sides. But I think we put a lot of thought into it, and I think that the public will recognize that there was a lot of thought, and I think this commission in general is held up pretty highly in this community. So while they may not agree with it, or they may not even understand all the pros and cons, because to Janie's point, they may not really get into all the details until the very last second. I think in general, I think this commission, in the way it's conducted itself, in the way we move through, just like discussing this particular issue for 2+ meetings now, holds a lot of weight. I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to hurt us at all, personally, when it comes to the final vote. They may not be thrilled with that line, if they either disagree with us or they don't understand the pros and cons entirely. But at the end of the day, I don't see it personally as being a deal breaker for anybody. And I think a lot of it will go back to just how we, as a council, have dissected these issues all the way through. And so I feel very confident that at the end of the day, this is we're going to present the whole document to the town. And while everyone's going to have something they don't like about it, I feel very confident most people will, put aside whatever they don't like and make the right, what I perceive to be the right decision, which of course would be approved this time. So that's my 2 cents. Maybe 3 cents.
Again, one of my only worries is, Laura, I think your point's great about, educating the public and stuff like that. I'm also unsure of how many people that we can reach out and have those type of conversations with people that have read this or have heard from somebody, which unfortunately I believe is still going to be, the biggest way that people hear about this type of stuff is, hey, what do you think about this? They go to their friends, they go to people that pay attention, and then a couple of people tell them, oh, there's no representation. And again, I still think it's the best way of what we have in this preliminary thing. But unfortunately, I'm also thinking about it for reasons of getting this thing to pass and understanding that what's the most important thing. The most important thing is that we switch to town council, right? That's how I look at it. And if we aren't able to do what Laura's saying and educate the amount of people that do have questions and don't understand or don't go back into our meetings and see some of the video and some of the discussion that we had about it, are we alienating voters that we need to pass this? Where now I look at it from the other side, okay? If we do have a discussion about this and end up switching something to a precinct, elected precincts, are we eliminating voters that were going to vote for this at large? And I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think someone's looking at this going, well, I was going to vote for it when you guys had it at large. Now that you switch to the precinct, I'm not voting on it. I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe they're looking at this saying, okay, I want town council members at large. That's what you guys think is best is good. You want to switch to the precincts? Switch to the precincts. So that's what I'm nervous about, is not being able to get to those people, because let's be honest, there's not a lot of people showing up for these meetings as is. They're getting their information from other people and they're getting their information from Facebook. So unless we come up with some great ideas on how to bring thousands of people to an open public meeting, I just don't know how we're going to have those discussions and get that out there in a time frame. Or I worry about it at least. I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm worried about it by at least not having this discussion.
Yes, I think that's the point, Kevin. I think when we get to the education side, we have to literally blast our message in every channel that we can, right? And help people understand all the thought that we put into it, right? And I don't know when that communication stuff, like we're going to post it in the paper. I know we're going to post it in the paper. I'm sure we're going to have presentations available for people to download or whatever, but I think that's going to be the key part, is blasting it everywhere we possibly can to get people educated about the issues and educated about why we chose the path that we chose, because we definitely beat death.
Yeah, I see us potentially having to do at least one mailing, and that would go to every registered voter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I plan on using Norton Media Center, creating videos. We're probably going to have to do mailings. We'll use all the Facebook tools. We'll use all of the. Yeah, I think it's a. I think in order to combat some of the misinformation that might be spread out there, we're going to have to probably even invest a little bit of money to get this passed. And that's in the form of doing mailings and et cetera.
Can I jump in for a quick sec?
Sure, please.
I just want to remind everyone that under the campaign finance law, you guys are restricted in what you actually can do using town funds. What you have the ability to do is to send that final report, which includes any and all arguments that you want to make in favor or in support of the proposed charter. Anything else, you have the ability to hold meetings and informational sessions. You have the ability to address questions through, a writing that can be posted on the web, but you can't use municipal resources to send out anything other than the statutorily authorized mailing. So, a private group that's supportive of this effort can form essentially a PAC, except it's a ballot question action committee, and they can file with the town clerk and they can pull resources to do that. Anyone can take anything that the commission creates and send it at their own expense to the voters. But the commission itself is more limited in the authority that it has because this is a ballot question. So the way the law applies, no materials can be sent, for example, in connection with a charter committee's work that relates to a ballot question. But a charter commission has that special authority under state law to do the mailing with its final report.
Thank you. We are aware of what our requirements are and what we are allowed to do. Where did Keith go? Keith, we didn't hear from you. I just want to make sure you got heard.
Keith, you're on mute.
Hey, all right, no, I'm not. No, I'm actually with Janie with this, but working in the town, I've had a lot of people stop me and talk to me about the being a precinct or all at large, and a lot of them wanted it as a precinct because they're worrying about at large. It could be one section of town that could be all 7 members, could be like on Oak Street or whatever, just to pass something they want passed. And, I try to explain to them what we're trying to do here, and I'm getting a lot of negative feedback. So.
Okay. All right. So, has anybody that was previously in favor of at-large willing to make a motion to reconsider this question?
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Do I have a second?
I was second.
You were, sorry. Well, can she? Yes, I guess. You were already on that. Now I'm confused. Lauren, can you weigh in?
Typically, in my view, those kinds of parliamentary procedural issues are just to make sure that the meeting can proceed in an orderly fashion. So I think it's fine for someone
Okay.
to.
All right. Just wanted to make sure.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we want to have any further discussion, or should we go to the vote?
So can we talk about specifically which other items we would want to open up if this does pass? Because I think that's an important consideration, right? And I would need to go through I don't know them all off the top of my head. I would need to pull up a copy of the charter and walk through it, but that's important detail for us to have.
Give me a second. Let me see if I can find the list that we were using.
And Laura, what's our due date for the final again?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What's the due date for the final? October
23rd. Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to stop sharing the current screen and I'm going to share a different screen, which hopefully will work. Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay. So, questions come up specifically have to do with, sorry. Oh. Carrie has joined us. Sorry, I missed at what time Carrie joined us for the purposes of the minutes. Carrie just texted in what time you got here in the chat. So it looks like questions that we would need to revisit are number of members.
Yep. Term of members, obviously composition.
Yeah, whether we want them
I mean,
staggered,
Yep. Term limits. Yep.
how the president is chosen, I would probably want to revisit.
Yep.
Filling vacancies needs to be revisited.
Yeah. I would even want to revisit role of the council president, depending on how the president is chosen.
Okay. 13 and 14 using the column number to the left.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, I'm just going to highlight these real quick. Sorry, I got to move you guys out of the way. Although I don't think that matters to you. So, term limits, I don't think we need to talk about.
I would like to revisit term limits if we do this, because if I can't vote people out, then I want a way that they have to leave if I don't have the option to vote for them.
Okay. So we are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 areas we need to revisit within the legislative branch, and I forget if that has any ramifications. Timing of elections, possibly. The
Even
frequency.
things like the FinCom, where the FinCom has members from the town council, right? Are those going to only be at large, or can those come from precincts, right? Anything that is going to have anything to do with members of the council likely needs to be revisited.
Okay. All right. Everybody clear your calendars. I don't remember in what order we took these the last time, but I know we didn't take them in this order. So I'm going to create, probably not now. Okay, sorry. We're still having a discussion. So we have a motion and a second. All right, let's just talk about if there's anything else that we would need to change. Executive branch should be fine. I still think the town council serves as the water and sewer commission regardless. Alternates. Budget process, probably not. Shouldn't affect the citizen participation mechanisms. Transition committee. Is that going to affect anything? I don't think so. I think we're okay there. Does anybody see anything else major? All right, so we would have to get into elections, FinCom, and a good portion of the legislative branch.
Do we need to revisit recall? Does it, in terms of precinct versus at large, is it still going to be, any voter? Do the voters have to be from the precinct?
Yeah.
That's something we want to discuss.
Yeah, we're going to have to get into that as well. Anything else? Off the top of my head, sorry, I'm just thinking through some of these. I think that's everything. But that's substantial.
Lauren, can I ask a question? If we make this many changes, do we have to hold another public hearing, or would it behoove us to hold another public hearing to explain all the drastic changes that we've been making?
I guess more importantly, do we have to submit this as a preliminary back to the Attorney General?
It does not have to go back to the Attorney General, and there is no additional public hearing requirement.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this topic, on this vote?
So to clarify, the vote is to reopen the discussion, right? Not to change the result of the decision we'd already made?
Correct. So at this time, do we want to, reopen all of these topics? All right. Roll call vote. Hang on one second. Okay. Dave Heaney,
No.
David Wren,
No.
Keith,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Sandy,
No.
Janie,
Yes.
Denise,
Why did you make me last?
sorry,
No, I'm only kidding. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm inclined to say yes, even though I don't think we have to necessarily change all of these. But yeah, I'm happy to go talk about them again.
Carrie,
Yes.
I am a no. Okay, the yeses have it. So, I don't even know where to start.
So you're probably not going to want to hear this, but if we're going to go back into this debate, I'd like to go rewatch or at least reread the minutes of the discussions that we had. I don't think we can reasonably have this discussion tonight.
I would agree.
I would agree.
So, for everybody's edification, the meeting minutes that you want to watch are January 13th, beginning at 42 minutes 50 seconds. January 27th, beginning at 12 minutes 53 seconds.
What was the date on that? I'm sorry.
January 27th. And there was a very good list of the pros and cons in the meeting minutes of, give me a second. January 13th. There was a fairly organized list of the pros and cons of each.
I'm sorry, Laura. January 15th, January 27th.
January 13th and January. Yeah. Okay. All right. So based on this, I'm just going to the.
Also send that list out to us of all of those topics that we also need to revisit.
I'm probably going to redo I'm just going to make a second tab in this one.
Laura, just FYI, your calendar was on screen share, so you might want to
Thank you.
take us off next time.
Got it. Yeah. All right. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'm going to stop sharing altogether because I need to get to the calendar. All right. So we are currently meeting this week and next week. We have 5 weeks before we need to put our final report and final charter together.
And how much time, Lauren, do you need to change everything?
I'll do what I have to do.
Okay, so right now we're scheduled to meet the 14th and the 21st. Please be available on the 28th of September. We're already currently scheduled to meet on the 5th. We'll see where we are from then. The following Monday is Columbus Day. But in order to get this done, we may need to meet at some point this week. So if everybody could put on their calendar to please be available at 7 o'clock on Monday, September 28th. All right, let's table this for now and let's keep going through where we left off with the other public hearing. All right, so I'm going to go back to screen sharing and I forget where we left off. Give me a second.
And could I just make one request? So a few people in this meeting said they've heard from others that they had concerns about this, but we haven't. I don't believe we've heard from anybody in the public directly in this commission who has said, I am worried about the lack of representation if we go to precincts. I would like to hear from somebody. So if any of you who have had people who are apparently very interested in the intricacies of our debates, that have people coming up to you talking about precincts versus non-precincts, which I'm just surprised anybody's that interested. But if you could encourage them to come to our next meeting, I would love to hear their concerns directly if we could do that.
But Dave, I disagree with that because you have somebody here at this meeting that's brought it up. You've had people at other meetings brought it up, and you've had concerns on the.
No, so the feedback that we got earlier tonight was that Mr. Toole had heard from others that there would be a potential lack of representation.
No,
you and Jamie and.
That's not what he said. He said that he was concerned about the lack of representation and he liked precincts. So that's somebody right there that's come to a meeting that said.
Okay.
What I don't.
So even if I give you that, Kevin, that's one name.
Okay, but no, we've had others because we've had them written here.
If we're this concerned that it's this big of an issue in the election, I literally, you all apparently have people coming up to you on the streets saying this, and I haven't had that experience. So all I'm asking, Kevin, is that I would like to hear the same thing you're hearing. That's all I'm asking. So if any of you have people that are willing to come in and speak to us, I would appreciate hearing it firsthand, is all I'm asking.
Dave, I understand the frustration in this. I get it, okay? Because I understand that this is going to add a lot more work to this and it's going to draw a few meetings. I totally understand.
That's not at all why I'm frustrated.
Okay, well, I'm going to go. Okay, well, I'm gonna go with, there is some frustration here, because if there wasn't, you'd actually understand what we're trying to say is here, is that of all the things that we're talking about here, we've had people actually come to a meeting now. We've had it brought up at public hearings. We've had people write in on surveys saying that they have a problem with the lack of representation. What we haven't had is someone come and say, hey, we actually love this and we don't want precincts. So what I'm saying is that there is an issue here. There is a tendency to say that there is something that we need to look at. I don't agree with it. I'll tell you straight out, I do not agree with it. I think we should be at large. But what I'm telling you is if people are telling you something and you're not taking heed of it, well, then you're going to be in trouble later when it comes down. And I want to make sure that we're not ones later going, wow, if we just looked at this then, we may not be talking about not having this be voted in. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to do this as much as anybody else doesn't want to do it, because I think we have a good product here. But I don't want to lose it because we're too thick-headed to look at it from the other side.
Madam Chair,
I appreciate your energy and your passion, Kevin. I maintain my question. If there are people out there, I would still like to hear more from the public on this issue. Many of you seem to have many people coming up to you asking about this. If they are willing to come in, I would love to hear their perspectives.
All right, let's
My personal opinion is that we're letting the minority who speak up and complain drive this. And most people
I
are
concur.
more than happy with this charter. And we don't hear from them because they're happy with it and they're not coming to the meetings because they have nothing to talk about.
Well, and if you don't mind me saying, I mean, with all due respect, which I really don't like that saying, because it just means I'm about to say something that someone's going to seem disrespectful. But if someone wanted to talk to you specifically or me specifically, they will do that. People voted for me, people voted for you. They're comfortable coming to you. They're comfortable coming to me. They're comfortable coming to other people. Believe it or not, there are some people in this town who may not want to come to speak to some of you, including myself. There are people who don't want to speak to me as well. So when someone comes up to me and someone wants to speak to me, I'm going to bring up an issue.
And I was very clear in my question that if you have people who are comfortable coming to the commission, I would love to hear from them too. That's all.
can I?
All right, hang on. Yeah, let's Sandy jump in for a second, and then I just wanted to mention one thing as well. Go ahead, Sandy.
Okay, so two things. One is, if concern is that we're not hearing from people who are in favor of at large, I'd be happy to ask those people to come in, so that you can hear from them as well. I've heard from several people that felt very strongly about at large, and I would be happy to invite them to come to the meeting if you feel like you need that perspective. The second thing is I would like to ask anyone who, and I don't know, Madam Chair, if this is something we can do now or later, but from Mr. Toole and anybody else who objects to the, or who favors the precincts, I would like to know if that's going to make them become a no vote.
Okay, if I could just jump in 1 second here. So we were talking about people who did not. We actually did get an email from a woman by the name of Connie Doolin, who basically her email was, and we had sent it out. She fully endorsed the recommendations of the charter. So there are people, there are probably not as many, who are going to reach out to say, yes, I absolutely agree with that, with everything you say. The other thing I wanted to point out is I was very, very surprised at neither of the public hearings was this issue raised, not one. Out of the however many people, we had 49 people in the first one and small handful, where I expected to hear it in the second one. And we did hear from people who did not want to lose town meeting, but nobody brought up the issue with regards to precincts at the public hearing where we were supposed to be hearing that information. So I do want to point that out there as well. I would not mind hearing, Mr. Toole, are you here? If you could put yourself off mute. The one question that I have for you is that I think I'm most interested in hearing is, would you not vote for this charter if it was at large, even if it brought town council?
I think, a couple of things. I feel I was misquoted there. I absolutely personally have a problem with this. And I have spoken to people, and I will work on trying to get those people to a hearing. But most people don't. The people that I've spoken to, precincts were more important to them. So with that being said, to your question, it definitely doesn't go me from a slam dunk, right? But I believe in what this charter commission is doing, and the change of form of government is right for this town.
Knowing you can change it at some point in the future, and that's the only thing.
But I think this really comes down to representation. Knowing that people are represented. What we're doing is we're changing people's rights, taking away people's rights at a town meeting. And I believe it should go away too. But if you tie them to an individual, they will have a representative. And if that representative doesn't represent them, they can change that representative. They know they control this. They gives them less power if they're voting at large. And I think this really comes down to representation. That is all.
Okay, can I present a proposition then? We have 7 at-large council members. Each council member is separated in some manner. It could be alphabetically, could be streets alphabetically. Every town council member is responsible for answering the questions of a particular set of constituents. Could even be alphabetical. Let's say you're a town council member. You were assigned everybody with a last name of A through C. Anybody with that last name, they can come to you directly, and you are beholden to them to answer their questions and respond to their issues. You're on mute, Michael, sorry.
I'm sorry, so you're saying, I don't, it
So
is
7
proposed to
That's
me.
okay. 7 members presented, 7 members are elected at large.
Yep.
Every town council, we can put a rule within the charter. Every town councilor is responsible for responding to the constituents to which they have been assigned.
I think but it still comes down to voting, right? If someone's not happy,
They can vote for you. They can't.
No.
They can vote you out.
They can vote you out. But if you're living in a certain district and then you're not representing that district, that's why 2 at-large seats make sense. You have 7 seats. You have 5 that are represented by precincts. The 2 are the at-large seats and voted by the entire town. I think if there's a matter of if you're worried about certain issues, you have the 2 at-large seats that would balance out a majority of the town. Otherwise, it's going to be a no vote. But I think we're complicating. I think by doing all at-large seats is a mistake. I think it doesn't represent, the form of. I mean, unfortunately, we have split representation at a state level. But I mean, if that's why, if say you made 3 precincts. Right, I think it would be disastrous because it doesn't match our state level, right? So I really believe that the precinct voting is right, and I would implore you, reach out, survey people. I guarantee you, I haven't heard anyone who's like the at-large thing makes sense besides the members on this commission. It's the only people that have told me that.
But we are the people that were elected.
I will surrender that you guys know this better than anyone.
Yes, we were the ones who were appointed to do all of the research and make this educated decision.
Brian, can we take that question back to the commission, to your suggestion? I mean, we're ultimately the ones making this decision.
Absolutely.
So can we hear
And
those who
that's
are
why
precincts, if there's any flexibility for any sort of compromise they'd be willing to consider?
Yeah, I think the committee needs to really look at precincts as a whole. I think with the
You don't think we have?
Okay. Well, and that's okay. Then I'll surrender.
That was a question. You don't think we have?
But as a resident, I want to really stress my concerns for it because it really does come down to representation. I just think that is the best method, especially getting away from town meeting. I think trying to make it just at large just at-large seats is the wrong direction. So I will,
So
yield
I
my-
guess my question is we have a rule within the charter that specifically states that specific town councilors are beholden, are responsible for responding to constituents to which they are assigned. How is that not representation?
Well, and a couple of things, Madam Chairman. I'm not here to debate this. I'm here to express my opinions and my concerns. Okay?
I'm trying to find a
Go for it.
solution that
I'm not
doesn't
gonna
involve
debate,
us.
I don't want to get in a debate situation which I have no vote. Okay? But
I understand that.
concerns, and I think I'm actually, being honest with you, I find a little patronizing of some of the members on here saying, oh wait, well, where are these people? Well, I guess they'll see, I guess it really will depend on April, right? But some people don't want to come to these meetings and they just make up their mind or just vote no on it. I think by taking away representation, you are doing harm to this town and to the process that you're working on. That's my opinion. I'm not saying it's right. It's my opinion.
I understand.
And,
So
Madam Chair, may I jump in here? To be clear, I didn't say where are these people, and I'm making an assumption here that you were referring to me since I raised the question. What I said was I would love to hear from people who have this concern directly because I want to better understand it. Right.
And
so let's be clear
you
about
said it's
that.
like you didn't recognize me. I'm not a member of this committee, Mr. Heaney, and you recognize me. I don't. So it's in a patronizing manner. And with all due respect, you misquoted me and you kind of patronized me. So I mean,
I apologize for misquoting you. I misunderstood your point, and I apologize for that. But to be clear, you are a member of this community, and I love the fact that you are here, and I thank you for coming. Okay. What I would love to hear, though, is just more feedback. Right. If we're going to revisit an issue that we argued for probably the better part of 7 hours on this committee, I would just like to hear more. That's all I'm saying.
And
Madam Chair,
I apologize for snipping at Ms. Heaney.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to propose that we table this conversation until next time. I had no idea this is what I was walking into after work tonight. I'm certainly not prepared to debate it again without thinking about it and going back over my notes, which are somewhere in my file. So in any case, I would love to just end the discussion here and let us go back and revisit and maybe put it as a specific item on the agenda for the next meeting. And that way people are notified that this is what we're going to talk about and we're inviting them to come to talk on this specifically.
all right, just for clarification purposes, when you said you weren't prepared,
I'm sorry. I'm not prepared to debate the specifics that I had before. I'm on record with my opinion. But this is the only vote that we took that was a 5-4 decision. And I think to Dave's earlier point, it takes, it's going to take us sort of really focusing on this one issue. So I'm simply supporting Dave's earlier suggestion that we go back and talk about this, not tonight, but at the next meeting.
okay, let's table this for now. I forgot where I left off, sorry. All right, so I am currently sharing the screen for where we left off, and I do not remember. Board of Public Works. All right, I believe it was 3.5 here that we last left off. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, moving on. This was raised not officially, it was sort of unofficially. Zach, Phyllis and I had had several text conversations, the gist of which I had emailed to all of you. One of the things that he brought up was actually more of a question of whether we had considered making the town council president a member of the school committee. I did go back and say that we did discuss that. Nobody was in favor of it. Nobody made a motion for it. Based on that, I am going to assume nobody is inclined to go back on that decision now. Okay, so we're going to clear that one. Okay. Ray Cord had basically didn't understand wanted to see the emergency management director listed within the department heads that town council had to confirm. I went back and asked for further clarification. He felt that it was a position that was on par with the fire chief and the police chief. I had explained to him that these decisions were, these department heads in particular, were decided to have confirmation due to the percentage of the budget, overall budget that they represented, not necessarily the importance of their position or the level of their position. Upon clarification for that, he was perfectly happy with the way that section was drafted, so I'm just going to move on. Department of Public Works, as noted, Mr. Freeman in a second comment stated there was no need. The next topic is from same section, 4-3, multiple member bodies. Town manager shall appoint all multiple member bodies of the town from amongst the residents. Two people, well, Bill Gouveia had initially raised this and we received an email subsequent to that with her agreement, and I'll read through that. Section 4.3, and this has to do with keep in mind this is appointed only, not elected. Mr. Gouveia expressed concern with the process of town manager appointing multiple member bodies. If the town manager appoints someone to a committee and that person's not confirmed, town council has to wait for the town manager to pick a new candidate. Creates the possibility of a stalemate when the town manager insists that this is a person that they want. He would like to see a rule that states if the town manager's appointment is not confirmed, he must go on to the next candidate and provide a certain time limit where that vacancy has to be filled. Jen Carlino followed up and said, I agree. Appointments by a council have less potential for bias based on political reasons, or not appointing qualified people if they do not agree with a certain action. She provides an example. A town manager could decide not to reappoint someone to conservation if they voted not to release a conservation restriction, despite the town manager wanting that particular action. However, a majority of town council is less likely to vote with that kind of a political agenda, and it is less likely that someone with an axe to grind could have a member or an employee removed. Town council appointments of board and commission members has more checks and balances than only affording the town manager that power. Those are the two people that had raised issues with that particular section. Is anybody interested in revisiting this? Seeing none? Okay, we're going to move on. Okay. I think this is more of a clarification question because I think we've had this addressed before and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. This is with regards to section 6.5, specifically within B. Mr. Gouveia had a concern that the council can cut items in the budget, but it cannot add to them. Under the current system, the finance committee has the ability to recommend additions. And I feel like we had discussed this at least once, if not twice. If Lauren could please explain why the section is written this way and the town council can only delete or decrease an item, please.
Certainly. This really goes back to kind of, again, the separation of powers. The executive branch is responsible for preparing the budget, working with all, there's a budget process set forth in here in addition. And then the council gets to delete or decrease the programs or amounts because they may not want to fund something that the manager proposes. Again, if the council can add expenditures, then they're dealing with matters that are, executive in nature, and the question becomes, if that's going to put the town out of whack with respect to the tax rate, et cetera. How does that get dealt with? This is pretty common in towns with town councils or city councils. Again, it's a policy decision how the commission wants to deal with it.
Thank you. Based on the feedback from Mr. Gouveia and guidance from town council, is anybody inclined to make an amendment to this section? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Okay, this one. So with regards to both 7.3G, which has to do with initiative measures, and 7.4C, referendum measures, both of them have a time of taking effect, which basically has a requirement that there is a certain number of participation in the election in order for it to pass. So in the case of the initiative, 15% of the voters at the last annual town election need to vote in the, not necessarily need to vote in the affirmative, but 15% of the people who voted at the last town election have to show up and vote on this question. That's with regards to initiative. With referendum, also with initiative, and that's a supplemental. So if it gets resolved within the first round of the initiative measure, then this is moot. With regards to referendum, the bar is a little bit higher, with 20% needing to vote on the question at hand. Mr. Gouveia's question issue was that he was afraid of requiring a certain percentage of the number of total voters can provide a political advantage and incentivize the folks not in favor of it not to vote, so that it never makes that threshold, which is something that I had not considered, and having thought about it further, I'm not quite sure how I feel on the matter, but I was hoping to get Lauren's feedback on this and if she has seen this as an issue previously. Sorry, did you miss it?
No, I did hear. I'm sorry. My 13-year-old needed immediate attention. I hate when that happens.
They all do.
So the taking effect, the difference is, with respect to a proposed measure, it's something that doesn't exist, that the council has not yet approved, and that the idea is that at least a certain number of people need to show up in order to ensure that it's an appropriate action. With the referendum, the town council has approved it, and so there's essentially a different standard to undo what the council has already done.
Okay, correct. The question is, so Mr. Gouveia's issue was specifically that the people who were either not in favor of the initiative would not come out and vote no, so that it never got passed because it never achieved 15% of voter participation. Mm-hmm. That is what he's concerned about.
Understood. And, you know, this voter turnout issues, and I think we did talk about this a little bit, about what has been the history of voter turnout, what percentage of voters do show up. You know, it definitely matters that people show up to vote. If it's not 15%, then it doesn't pass. So, you know, the options are to lower the percentage, and that's something to think about, because obviously voter turnout varies, and the more people are interested, typically, the more they want to participate. So that's one option. The other option is to get rid of a percentage altogether. There is no requirement in state law, because this isn't governed by state law. This is governed by the town charter. So there could certainly be no voter turnout requirement. That's a policy decision. And, you know, I think the risk of people not showing up, I mean, that may be a strategy. I've never heard anybody use that as a strategy, but that doesn't mean that someone wouldn't. So again, I think it's a policy decision.
Based on the feedback we have heard, is anybody inclined to reopen the discussions in regards to 7.3 and 7.4?
All I'll say right now is when Bill brought it up, I was intrigued by it. I never thought about it from that perspective.
No, I hadn't either.
And it does seem to encourage, if you're not for something, just not to show up. So it kind of rewards not participating.
Yes. Well, it also provides an incentive to get people to show up with the
You get more of
the percentage of votes that they need. Yeah.
And strategically, if you wanted to gamble on that, you're going to take all the no's on whatever the issue is and tell them not to show up. So if it does get 15% plus one, it's going to be an overwhelming yes at that point. And I just think it's a bad strategy that people would figure out that that's a bad strategy. And if you want to vote no, you should vote no.
David,
Yeah.
you said you were intrigued by it. Are you intrigued enough to open it up again?
I'm observing. I think Dave just made a good point.
Yep.
No, I'm comfortable as it is.
Yeah, having thought about it for a couple of weeks, I think I am as well. Anybody else? Okay. That's the same issue. All right. Here's a thought. This wasn't something that was specifically brought up, a request for a change or feedback within the charter. Tristan Grieg was the young gentleman who asked how the Charter Commission is trying to make government more accessible to young people, whether there'd been any discussion about having a youth council in order to get people more involved in an earlier stage. My response was that the Charter Commission is concerned with overall lack of participation and voter apathy, and was hoping that the changes that we are presenting would energize all people to become more active and vote more often. But I did give it some consideration and wanted to find out if there was any interest in opening the 8.2, the periodic review, up to allowing, I suppose we need to ask town council, can we even consider adding the ability to include student, young person, non-voting members to this group? And if so, is this something that we want to consider as a charter change?
Well, I don't think there's anything that would prohibit the appointment of non-voters, so I don't see why it would prohibit newer or younger, younger students. Whether that's something that you think is appropriate for the charter, that's pretty specific. I guess the question is what happens if it requires an appointment and nobody is willing. And in that case, I would likely say it's directory rather than mandatory.
Yep.
But certainly that's something that you can consider, that the commission can consider if it's interested.
Does this sound, and I was proposing it as just allowing them the ability to do so, not requiring them to do so. It was something I literally thought of about 30 minutes before the meeting, so I haven't thought through the full machinations of it, but wanted to just get some feedback and see if anybody else thought this was a good idea or bad idea. Not inclined.
Madam Chair, I do remember him raising this issue, and I thought it was a good one. But where my mind went was it's something that maybe the town council could consider having some sort of ad hoc committee, because he was talking about outreach, I think. And so having a group within the town council that involves some younger people to get them involved might be appropriate. I hadn't thought of adding it to the charter.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure we want to, and maybe that's something we kind of put in the notes for the transition committee to have the town council consider, while they're putting together their rules and policies. I like the idea of it. I'm not sure this is the exact correct place for it. I have a feeling some of them would probably be it's probably, it's trial by fire. It's not a real good initiative into the government workings of a small town. I think a lot of them might be in, over their head with just the concept of charter initially. So there may be a better way of going about it. It was just an idea.
Yeah, Laura, can I jump in here too?
Sure.
I like the idea in general of having, youth and students involved wherever we can in our municipal government. I do agree that it may not be the wisest to put it in terms of within our charter and in requiring it. But I do like the idea of keeping something open for, youths who want to be involved. And even if, even talking about the periodic review charter committee, if you had some students who wanted to be involved, they can come sit in on all the meetings and, maybe even, I don't know if they'd be allowed to give their opinion as part of the public, but certainly it's a great learning experience for them. And if they wanted it, I like the idea of making it available without making it part of the charter in terms of a required position.
So is this something we want to consider doing here, adding language, giving them the ability to assign? Is there a term for, it's not ex officio, is it, Lauren? Those who don't have voting power?
Yeah, no, ex officio would be someone who holds another position that is a member of a board or committee based on that position. So by virtue of that position.
Okay.
Certainly, there's nothing that requires that non-voting members be addressed in the charter. If there was a non-voting member provision, they would count towards. They wouldn't count towards a quorum because they wouldn't be voting. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing where I think you had suggested perhaps considering putting a note in the final report. That is the kind of thing I think where it would make sense. I don't believe that the council is limited when it's putting together any committee to, asking people with interest to participate by attending the meetings. And oftentimes, for example, let's just say for a conservation commission, they might have someone that they turn to that they think is really knowledgeable and provides insight, but that person doesn't have a vote at the table. So I think those options are still there, whether they say so in the charter or not.
Anybody else have any comments on this one?
Yeah, I think, I think I agree with Lauren, I guess, but I just feel, I'm torn the other way in that, we had a young person who was interested, stepping up, asking to have this put in. So I hate to discourage it, I guess. And, while anything's, while it seems possible that it could be done, really any kind of community. It does seem like a nice thing to have, to encourage younger people to get involved.
Do we feel like we want to put it in the charter or put it within the final report and make a note for the transition committee?
Yeah. I don't know, my personal opinion in the note, in the transition, the report or the transition committee, it's probably forgotten about in a few years.
I like the idea of the note for the transition committee and just, keeping that young enthusiasm alive. I mean, I know we only saw one, or very few young people come out, but I think just making a note and trying to keep that young activism and enthusiasm alive, and people can do it in many different forms, different committees, and just something for them to keep in the back of their heads, I think is a nice idea.
I'd support
As
that
opposed to
route as
putting
well.
it in the charter.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what, Carrie?
I said I would support that route as well.
Okay. I've got a list of things that we need to update for the final report, so I will add that there. Bill Gouveia had a comment with regards to the second part in B. He would like to see that ordinary citizens who don't hold town position or offices are accounted for in the Charter Review Committee. Suggested adding language that the last two positions, meaning the two registered voters, must be people who do not hold any town office or serve on any board. How do we feel about this?
That's certainly how I interpreted the language as it is.
I
So
kind
I
of
have no
did too, but it is not explicit. So
Right.
it could wind up being another FinCom member or school committee member or
Sure.
both.
So I'd be fine clarifying it, because I think that's what we intended.
I agree.
Anybody disagree? Okay. Lauren, can you amend that, make it sound pretty? Please and thank you. All right. Almost done. Mr. Stefanelli was not in favor of changing the housing authority from an elected to an appointed position. He felt it better as an elected position. I don't remember him if there was any specific rationale other than he just had a stated preference. So I know this was at the guidance of town council, and most town council forms of government had an appointed housing authority. Based on that, is anybody inclined to reverse their course on this particular item? Hearing and seeing none, moving on.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, Keith.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
She actually, the housing authority, Angela, I think her name is. She was, she came to me and asked me, she wanted to leave it elected, not appointed, and I said, I don't know, I'll bring it up. That's all I said, I'd bring it up.
Is this somebody who's currently on the,
She
House-
runs Housing Authority.
all right, so she's already on that. I know there's Marilu and Ralph.
Not an account, yeah, Ralph's on it. She's one that actually runs the whole place. Right.
Did she provide a rationale why?
I didn't get nothing, but maybe I can get her to email you. I don't know. I just know that she was concerned. That's all.
Okay.
And I just heard about this like a couple days ago. So
Yeah, if you don't mind,
I don't know why she never emailed us. She should have.
yeah, if you don't mind having her reach out, and I would just like to hear a rationale.
Right. Yeah.
If it were me, I would think that more people would be inclined to, and I know there's a seat that's currently still available. If it were me or any new citizen, it's certainly easier just to ask to be appointed than it is to have to run for the seat.
I'm the same way. I understand. So
Yeah.
I'll just ask her to reach out. That's all.
Okay, all right, let's table, I'll make a note, we'll table this one.
Okay.
Until we get some,
Feedback.
yeah, if somebody can provide something that we hadn't considered.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the transition committee, this was Maureen Straczynski again. And this was, okay. 9.6F, this is with regards to the transition committee for what happens after the election, and if it passes. Mr. Straczynski suggested having a volunteer citizen involved in the transition committee. And then got into the Robert's Rules of Order. So the 7 members of the Select Board Chair, Charter Commission Chair, 2 Charter Commission members, 2 FinCom members, and the town moderator and or their designees. I wasn't quite sure what it served, or if there was a value added. But I'm open to listening to feedback if anybody is in agreement with Ms. Krasinski.
So if I remember correctly, we just added 2 finance committee members to keep it odd.
Yes.
So I don't think we were really invested in 2 members. We just wanted at least 1, and then we didn't know who to put make that last person to make it an odd number. So we just threw in a second finance committee member. So I wouldn't have an issue taking one of those out and then just putting in, a citizen who's not part of any other committee.
Who would appoint them?
What do we have right now?
So we have the Select Board Chair, Charter Commission Chair, 2 members of the Charter Commission as voted by the Commission, 2 members of FinCom, and the town moderator. Could be the designee of any of those.
I mean, town manager is a possibility, right? To nominate someone
I'm trying to think if there's anybody. Yeah, for lack of a better. Lauren, can you weigh in if there's any precedent issue? Have you seen non-board members on the transition committee previously?
No, because it's a creation of the towns, and I think, you guys had switched this out a little bit from what they used in North Attleboro. Whether, you want to have 2 members of the FinCom, that's, I think that's a strict policy decision, although sitting here right now and looking at it, I'm thinking, well, what about the town manager? That town manager is probably a person that you would want to have provide assistance with the transition. So that's, which is kind of separate from saying, let's add a volunteer citizen.
Okay.
We do mention the town clerk, the town manager shall provide whatever support is needed.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Thank you, Mr. Wren.
I don't know how I'm inclined.
I guess I'm just not sure what,
I don't know what value it adds.
yeah, I don't either. I don't see what it sounds nice, but I don't get the value.
I think the people that are on this list are the ones that, have more vested interest in the transition going smoothly and are up to speed with some of the things that are going to be changing. It's sort of my feeling or my leaning on this.
They also know like what the transition committee needs to be thinking about, whereas an everyday citizen might not know the intricacies of how the committees work with each other or how government is working. So
does anybody feel strongly about a citizen volunteer being on this committee? Sandy, I know you said you were in favor of it. Does it?
It wasn't necessarily, I'm not married to it. I was just thinking if we wanted to put that person on there, that would be a spot we could. I just don't want to add more people to it. So I was thinking that we could replace one for one, but I don't really have any strong opinion as to why they should be on either.
Okay. Yeah, I think if that person hasn't been paying particularly close attention, they could be lost in the weeds a bit. Okay, so if nobody has any strong opinion on adding a citizen, then I'm going to move forward. Okay, seeing, hearing none. I think that's it. That's it. We're done. Okay, so for the purposes of the next meeting, I'm going to put together, I'll probably just send around the existing list that I had shared earlier with the decisions that needed to be made, so that everybody has a chance to think about them in advance of the next meeting. I'm going to have to revise. Well, maybe I won't. We still need to go through the Attorney General's opinion, Lauren. You saw that they came in?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Nothing.
I can, sorry,
That's
I
okay.
can tell you too, I had a brief conversation with them today, with the office today, so I'm happy to go through that. No, it doesn't have to be now, obviously, but
Okay. Yeah.
for the next time, I'm happy to explain.
It didn't, nothing looked terribly onerous, and one of them I think we actually raised in something that we found in the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, my perception of the letter is that they didn't find anything substantive that they were worried about, and that the few things that they mentioned are things that the commission can look at to see if it wants to clarify.
Okay. All right. Sorry, there was I think given the hour, we'll table it. I had sent the list and I copied everybody of things that we want to clarify and potentially correct before the final charter was issued. It was a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So let's address those and the Attorney General's comments at the next meeting, and then we will get into reconsideration of recommendations. And let's plan on that being our agenda for next week, which actually runs fairly much along the lines of what's in the agenda we posted. So does anybody else have anything? Sandy, you look like you want to talk.
Question, I was just kind of doing some dates going back, because we need to kind of revisit our timeline, and I think, have we decided who's gonna write the final report?
We have not. If
I
Terry,
can't do that until we've made the decisions, but I'm thinking, backing everything up, that the final report should be started by the beginning of October.
Yeah.
So all of our decisions should be made in September in order to get that done. So we can have time to vote on the preliminary report and take a look at it together. So we don't, we don't run into a time crunch at the end there. I think whatever decisions we need to make have to be made within this month. If we have to add more meetings to get that done, I think I prefer that rather than having meetings go until 11 o'clock.
Yep.
During school.
Understood. Okay, so at this point, we have the 21st and the 28th. Let's evaluate at the 28th and see whether we need to add to, well, the 5th will be our next meeting. So basically, we're going to meet every Monday for the next 4 weeks. Well, including tonight. Then
Next 6 weeks, because we have to have the final report started the 5th, vote on it the 12th. I'm sorry, discuss it on the 12th, vote on it on the 19th, so it's ready for the 23rd.
okay, the 12th is a holiday.
Yeah, so we're looking at least 6 meetings, and that's if we can get everything decided in the next 2 meetings.
Okay, all right. So what are people's schedules? Anybody going anywhere for Columbus Day weekend? I know it used to be before we used to be able to go places. Anybody have any issues with the meeting on the 12th, or do we need to reschedule that particular meeting for a different night that week?
I'm fine with the 12th.
Everybody's okay with the
Yeah,
12th?
me too.
All right. So if everybody could pencil in basically every Monday until the 19th, please. Lauren will have you in to talk about the questions that we had, the clarifications that we had in the Attorney General's report, and then we'll see where we are. We may let you go on the when we get back into some of the reconsideration. We don't want to keep you.
Certainly, and you'll
questions.
you also, I mean, if I know you're meeting every Monday and you need me, you can call me and I can hop on if needed.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Anybody else have anything they wanted to discuss this evening? Okay, seeing none, Chair will take a motion to adjourn, please.
See you later.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Thank you. Everybody's in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Good enough. All right,
Yes.
we're adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
See you later.